Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest in the Lockdown Your Learnings series of webinars from Technology Ireland ICT Skillnet. This series has been running since the start of the lockdown and has covered many important and interesting topics. So if you'd like to access any of those that have been broadcast already, you can do so via the ICT Skillnet YouTube channel, which is available through ictskillnet.ie on the homepage. There you'll also see a further program for other topics that are coming down the line. So today we're going to be talking about education and training in change-led organizations, and I'll be joined by Mark Jordan, the Chief Technologist from Skillnet Ireland, and Mary Cleary, the Deputy CEO of the Irish Computer Society and the ICS Foundation. In the next edition in the series, Carmel Summers will be talking about aligning the organization's business and human capital strategy for competitive advantage. So that's on the 29th of October at the same time. There's a strong program coming up. You can see there every Thursday, right up into the Christmas series. And again, full details of those are available on ictskillnet.ie, and you'll see a link there for the Lockdown Your Learnings webinar series. Just a reminder as well that October is Cyber Month, and there are a range of different activities and initiatives there. So again, more details on the website. So we're talking about education and training in change-led organizations. And what this means is that the organizations today are having to cope with providing education and training where the pace of digital change is accelerating rapidly. Digital transformation is becoming the norm, and IT professionals themselves are looking to cross-skill and upskill as well as just develop professionally as they go. And all of this is being taken in the context of continuous professional development and lifelong learning being encouraged by various organizations and adopted as a strategy. So to talk about this, then we have Mark Jordan, who is the Chief Technologist of Skillnet Ireland, and who also has held a number of roles in financial services and fintech, and Mary Cleary, who's Deputy CEO of the Irish Computer Society and the ICS Foundation. And Mary oversees ICT professionalism and digital inclusion policy and initiatives across a range of committees, agencies, and organizations. So Mark is going to talk first about the sort of strategic development and training in the current context, and how both content and delivery of this is evolving. So just a reminder then that you can participate in the discussion later. We're going to have two short presentations first, and then we're going to have a discussion on the topics. So you can participate. If you go down to your options at the bottom, you'll see the Q&A, and you can answer, or you can enter questions there, which we'll be monitoring as we go, and we'll answer them. But there's also a raise hand function if you wish to actually speak to the panelists and to put forward a question that way or add a comment. We'll also have some polls as we go, and we'd encourage you to participate in those to let us know what you are, what you're thinking on the topic too. So with that, I'll hand over to Mark for a short presentation.
Thank you, Paul, and hello everyone. It's great to be here. What I wanted to do is to talk a little bit about, just for a couple of minutes on Skillnet Ireland and kind of introduce the organization, and then talk about some of the strategic initiatives that we have ongoing and planned for the future. I thought that would be good context to set here, just for anybody unfamiliar with the organization. And so I wanted just to kind of introduce how we operate and what we're doing. And our goal is obviously to help upskill the workforce is the number one priority. And we do that in an industry-led manner. Everything we do is driven by the requirements of business and the requirements of industry and the wider economy. And there's three real things that we'd like to focus in on, and I'll just pull those out of the bullet points here. The first one is to help companies identify the opportunities to innovate and adapt quickly to new opportunities and challenges. The second area is to help companies have that reputation of innovation, have that reputation of agility, and be able to attract and retain talented people into their organizations. And then the third area is helping companies, again, through upskilling, through the development of training, and through closely aligning what we do with their business objectives to help them unlock value, remain competitive both domestically and internationally, and help them accelerate growth. And that's what we're all about. And that's how we kind of position ourselves in the industry, in the world of skills, talent development across Ireland. We do that with the help of our industry partners, and we operate with 70 different industry partners, of which the Technology Ireland ICT Skillnet are one of our major partners. But we're in across various different sectors, all sectors, all major sectors within the country, and we're in all key regions. So either our networks are geared towards sectoral alignment or regional alignment. And just to give you a sense and a flavor of what we typically achieve, and this year in particular, we'll have strong engagement with over 18,000 companies in terms of their talent development needs. We'll support over 70,000 trainees, either working with those companies or displaced workers looking for opportunities. We'll deliver over 8,500 training courses, and that equates to over 540,000 different training days, which is quite an immense offering when I read those numbers and consider what we do as a whole. And all of those networks are backed by over 50 different industry associations. So we have great reach, great power, and great links into industry across the country. And I just wanted to showcase that to begin with. The second area that we operate in, it's been really prevalent this year, especially through lockdown, and especially through some of the restrictive nature of business that we've had throughout the year. And we've developed what we're calling central initiatives, and they're initiatives where we don't necessarily utilize all of our 70 networks. These are more centrally managed, really well curated and targeted towards certain things that we're trying to deliver and trying to bring thought leadership to companies, to industry. First one of those is around mentors work, and that's helping SMEs start to become more productive, start to think about how they can get access to professional services, how they can get access to finance, how they can understand how to build business strategies, and really helping them as they start to think about growing and scaling their businesses. And we do that through a mentoring program specifically geared towards the SME cohort. The second area is around rebound. Rebound was interesting, very prevalent as we came out of lockdown, and that was to help business prepare for reopening and to prepare them for how their businesses would look going forward from a COVID-19 protocols perspective, all the way up to how they can kind of digitally reimagine their businesses and the type of innovation they can start thinking about in order to stay resilient and to continue their growth and a growth path and align to their business objectives there. So that was a very successful program we rolled out. The third area is one that's more recent in the last few weeks. It's called Skills Connect, and that's been an initiative that we have developed, and it's akin to a career development initiative where we're thinking about the displaced workers who have fallen into or coming out of a sector that's been hard hit by COVID-19 and the general downturn of the economy, and showing them and understanding where their skill sets need to realign in order to become competitive in other sectors that are perhaps growing in this country. So you could say that, for example, that the hospitality sector has shrunk, but yet certain parts of the finance sector or the technology sector are growing and becoming more buoyant, and we're seeing jobs growth in certain areas and job shrinkages in other. And the goal of this is to help people take their core skill set and understand what that delta skill need is in order to compete for these jobs in these growing sectors. So those are three areas that we've had a lot of traction with this year and a lot of impetus. The next thing, which is really all about for Skillnet Ireland this year and next year and then years to come, is around helping companies become digitalized and how we can enable that digitalization mindset within industry, and in particular within the SME type companies and that we have so many of here in Ireland. And this would be a multi-sectoral initiative. And we're going to be really thinking about what are the steps we need to take as an organization with our wider partners and our centralized initiatives in order to really deliver digitalization opportunities to the Irish economy. And we've come up with a framework that I'd like to share, and this is really signaling what's to come here from us. And we've broken down the needs into 5 specific areas, and they're listed on the left there. That's digital business systems, leadership and culture, talent and teams, marketplace enablement, and operational systems. And what do we mean by that? So digital business systems is how we can help companies develop business strategies and go-to-market strategies these are all through training, development, and the types of programs that allow that. How we can help with defining digital transformation strategies as well, helping companies understand the value of data that they have and what sort of the better cost management tools and building that skill set within the organization. Second area around leadership and culture is all around about building leadership agility and management resilience, and helping companies build that culture of partnership and collaboration, and understanding where they can bring in domain experts to partner with, not thinking they have to scale internally in order to be successful. So it's all part of the kind of the digital transformation journey. Third area is around talent and teams, and that is very key, because a lot of that will be around building and managing remote teams. And we know that there are challenges with remote workers around trust, engagement, performance management, productivity, and connectivity. And so we're looking at the types of programs that you can roll out to companies that will help them be more successful with building and developing high performance teams, and building that ability to have those teams be creative in the way that they virtually collaborate. The fourth area is what we're calling marketplace enablement, and that is how companies engage and work with customers and appeal to customers. So a lot of that will be around techniques for improving the customer experience with the organization through digital channels, how to help with customer retention, the all-important factor of business as they look to grow organically. So all of these engagement type tools and skill sets that we need to help companies develop, along with digital sales and marketing channels, and how to develop that platform for organizations to function digitally as well as physically. And then the last area is operational systems, and that's the technology piece. Those are the solutions that companies will be looking at, which businesses will need in order to have that digitalized environment, have that framework. And those are the types of tools, and helping them develop the skills to identify which type of tools they need that will help their business, and how to integrate those tools into their workflow, into their operational processes. So we're really excited about the future of industry and the upskilling and the future world of work. And I think that we'll start to see a lot more coming from Skillnet Ireland around digitalization for business, and a lot more of the themes of what we deliver will be around building that digital agility and that digital mindset within Irish businesses. And that's really geared towards SMEs, but also the FDI type businesses and the other multinationals that we have here in Ireland. Just all that we can do to do that, but do that in a way that's a journey as opposed to singular types of programs. We want to kind of go on this journey that backs into the business objectives that companies have. So I think that was really all I had to say on the outset for what we're doing and the way that we're strategically aligning ourselves to the way forward. And so I'm pleased to be able to share that with you, and I'll be happy to discuss more afterwards.
Thank you very much, Mark. Some interesting points there, and particularly in terms of the efforts that are focused towards SMEs, because I think, if anything, the recent experiences have shown that Irish SMEs can compete online. And that there are the tools and the infrastructure there to support that. So interesting points to explore there. So now we're going to move over to Mary from the Irish Computer Society and ICS Foundation. And Mary is going to talk a little bit more about the learning experience and issues in supporting people to learn, as well as the IT skills gap.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, and to the Technology Ireland Skillnet. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to make a small contribution to this very important subject. I've called this presentation, brief as it is, the IT skills gap dilemma, and I'll cover a number of areas relating to that. So first of all, I think we all know that there's a rolling about 12,000 IT vacancies in Ireland every month. That's likely higher now, as COVID has definitely increased the demand for ICT skills and that kind of role across Europe. Of course, these are two sides of the same coin. They're not really very different kinds of issues. It's important that a digitally literate population is available to engage with the digital economy and to use digital public services. And particularly in these times where there's a lot of isolation due to restrictions and what have you, the digital divide is a considerable cause or exacerbating factor in the well-being of people. So narrowing that digital divide is very important. So a sharp focus has been put on digital inequality during this COVID-19 time, in terms of education and the access that students have to devices and technology, for people working from home. And in all of this, it's become very clear to us that skills people have are not as good as we thought. Now, Ireland has a digital economy, as we know, just like the rest of Europe. And at the start, Paul mentioned digital transformation, and that's very much so the buzzword of industry globally. But it's important to know what we mean when we talk about digital transformation, because it's not just the adoption of technology into industry. It's about transforming business. And a better term, perhaps, was coined by Capgemini in 2018, that of digital business transformation. So it's important that the business part is in there as well, that there's a change to the fundamental way in which things are done. And this has been shown to be a priority for more than 80% of European companies in a recent survey, where 500 or 600 companies, it was a large survey, were questioned. And business and technology skills are clearly both needed for the advancement of industry and the economy in general. And underlying all of this is an appropriate professional workforce. This is key for efficiency and productivity, for improved operations, reduced risk, including cyber risk, which there's a lot of talk about these days, and particularly this month, and also for career advancement and morale of the workforce itself. It's very important that people are considered. We talk a lot about talent, and we talk a lot about skills, and what we really mean are the people who have the talent and the people who have the skills. However, the skills gap continues to widen. This is a European picture, and we can see that with the green line that the supply of skills and the jobs that are filled is rising steadily. But with the red line, you can see that the demand is growing not only equally, but actually at a slightly higher rate. The gap is widening. We would like to see the gap between these two lines narrow, but that is not happening. So the supply is growing, but it's continually outperformed by the demand. So we have to figure out ways of dealing with this. And a lot of the work that Mark has talked about that's undertaken by Skillnet Ireland, and in this domain in particular about the Technology Ireland Skillnet, is involved in trying to address the issues that are here. So education and training are very, very important. Conversion of people from occupations that are no longer so much in demand, whether due to COVID or due to just the way industry is developing and economies are developing, it's very important that we look at opportunities for them to move into the tech centre, again, with conversion, education and training. There has to be novel schemes and different ways of delivering education. Traditional modes are fine, but we need to look at new and different ways of doing it. Immigration is also something that has been examined and has been applied quite successfully in Ireland in terms of bringing in some of the high-tech skills that we need. But I want to talk a little bit about the ICT profession, because there have been many investigations and studies into the cause of the skills shortage, and lots of different initiatives have been undertaken to address it. But maybe it might be worth having a think for a minute about the notion of professionalism in this sphere. Because ICT or IT is not a regulated profession like some other professions we might think about. You might think of law or medicine or architecture, any of these traditional professions. They're regulated and there are key codes of conduct and ways of operating and being qualified and recognized that are accepted. But we don't have this in IT. There are 4 key pillars of any profession, and they've been agreed across the board. And these are the availability of bodies of knowledge, common bodies of knowledge across specialities within the profession, education and training, competences, and professional ethics. And these 4 pillars are critical to any profession. And in the absence of the tradition of being a profession in IT, and in the absence of a professional regulatory body, these agreed pillars must be standardized and assimilated into the realization of professionalism. And there is ongoing work between the European Commission and SEN, the European Standards Organization, and the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition to address this. So we must look then at new ways of delivering education, keeping in mind the professionalism requirements that I've mentioned. So the traditional way of delivering education through universities must be replaced or supplemented with new market-oriented training. It's important to consider options like public-private partnerships, but we must also remember that the universities and the traditional higher education institutes, they are the education and the curriculum experts. And while we might adopt a shorter and midterm solution, it's important that we hold on to the education system that we have developed over many, many years and not to relinquish it in its entirety to the private sector. At the same time, modern curricula have to take account of what the market needs from graduates. And in order to deliver this, partnership is required between public entities, private entities, universities, training providers, agencies like ICT Skillnets. All of these kinds of things are very, very important. I think it's also important to remember that digital skills is part of every job, every occupation, and should be a component of every field of study. And out there in the field, we have examples of many outstanding initiatives and tools existing. So we don't have to go and reinvent all of this. The public-private partnership kind of activity that I mentioned could bring all of the stakeholders together within a country, like within Ireland, or right across Europe. And one body that has been brought together to do that is the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition. It's an initiative from the European Commission, which has spread right across all of the member states. So we must remember that investing in people also is key. And part of the solution to the skills gap and to addressing and making sure that we can facilitate digital transformation or digital business transformation is recruitment, taking account of the availability of older workers, addressing the gender gap, looking at this not necessarily so much as a crisis, but as an opportunity, because we have a pool of available people who can be upskilled to fill tech roles. And industry has a part to play also by making the sector more attractive, by instilling empathy into the way they operate and providing better work environments for all. So investment in people is absolutely essential. And for Europe and Ireland, of course, but for Europe to maintain precedence during this digital transformation of the economy, and very importantly, to retain digital sovereignty. It's something we don't talk about too much, but having this independence that we get from digital sovereignty is an important consideration. So I just want to finish up by saying that we know what the situation is. The skills deficit that we experience right across the board is well rehearsed. And the next step is to use this knowledge to generate solutions. So we have to focus on ICT as a fully fledged profession with its, its status and its pillars of professionalism, its code of ethics, its framework of competences, etc., that can determine it and define it as being a fully fledged profession. And there are bodies in Europe that are all very well represented within Ireland. SEN, the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition, the technical committees, and the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition, who come together to address all the sides of the coin, the skills for professionals and the corresponding skills for the masses of the population that are all needed to work together to ensure that we can drive forward the economy. So I think that's my contribution. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. We might just start off with some generic questions first. And maybe going back to you first, Mark, you have that kind of broad view across a lot of organizations and stakeholders. And in the current context where so much is changing so rapidly at the same time, where are the areas where the most energy is being expended to try and cope with the current demands, both in terms of the market needs and then the needs of individuals?
In terms of what we do, or from a business perspective?
Well, in terms of the education and training need, because what we're seeing really is the fact that there is an emerging skills gap, which we'll address with Mary as we go. But there also seems to be diverging needs in terms of the skills that are being demanded by the market, first of all, by emerging new areas and disciplines, secondly, but also in terms of people's ambitions and drives and where they want to go as their careers develop. So in terms of that sort of overall strategic view, where is energy being directed to try and, first of all, understand those different needs, and then secondly, to try and address some of the key areas within it?
Yeah, and we've done a lot of research across what we're terming as kind of sectoral level research, where we've done deep dives and spoken to a lot of companies operating in certain sectors. And there are some nuances there, and companies typically have been, the fear of transformation has been a big challenge. And this is outside of the ICT sector. Within agriculture, engineering, or manufacturing, a lot of those companies, a lot of those participants in those sectors, change is a scary word, and I think, by just putting programs out there and upskilling initiatives doesn't, we're not appealing to companies in the same way. And I think a lot of emphasis has been from post-lockdown is kind of re-emerging and regenerating lost revenue, and companies are very kind of fixated on that. and any skill upskilling is very technical. As opposed to transversal, and I think the way we're trying to frame it is you need to have that blend of both. And our research is telling us that when we probe companies in across all sectors and across all regions, is they understand that it's just having the headspace and the time to allocate themselves and their staff towards it. So we've got to make it very consumable. And I think what industry is telling us is we want a mixture between technical and transversal skills, but it has to be delivered in a consumable way.
Okay. Well, Mary, you gave very distinct detail there about the IT skills gap and how it's still diverging. Those two lines are moving slowly apart. So we have a question in there from an attendee who said, where do you think there is a skills shortage? Because they're saying that it's clearly not just an unwillingness of employers to train up junior staff and upskill older workers, but that there seems to be more at play there. So where do you think the gap is coming from, and why is it widening despite all of these efforts?
Well, I think if we really knew the answer to that question, there probably wouldn't be a gap anymore. Excuse me. But there's lots of theories and lots of surmising about it. And when we're talking, we can talk about it from two angles. We can talk about it from bringing youngsters into education to gear them towards careers in technology, and also then look at upskilling junior staff and older workers, as the questioner has said. So in terms of the youngsters coming into college, I think there's such a variety of occupations out there now. The choice is so wide. If you look at the list of courses that a youngster is confronted with in trying to make a choice for the CAO, it's absolutely mind-boggling. There are more careers and more options than there ever were. And even if they have a tendency towards technology, did you ever look at the pages and pages and pages of different courses? Which one would you do? And how can you possibly differentiate? So it's a huge element of confusion and not understanding quite what the pathway into a career in IT or technology is. So there's that misunderstanding between what a job in technology might look like and what the training for that job might be. And also there isn't a clear enough connection between a career, as a professional technologist, if you like, and a career in any other domain like the arts or business or retail or medicine or construction or anything, because all of those domains all have professional IT people working within them. There's no professional in medicine or in construction or in the arts that doesn't have to have very highly developed IT skills. So I think we need to make sure that message is really getting across. And then just very quickly on the upskilling of workers who are already in existence. It's always a people management thing. It can be done, but it has to be done in a way that has something for the people who are being offered this upskilling. They have to feel that it's a benefit to them, and the employers have to be encouraged to provide these opportunities. Mark mentioned having the headspace to think about these things. It's really important. That's a very key point, because it's important to be able to consider the benefits on the side of the employer and on the side of the individual, and to try and bring them together. Okay. Well,
there's another question in which raises an important point and something that we've touched on already, around the fact that while there are great supports from various organizations for continuous professional development, that the person here says that they've only ever been asked once by an auditor if they were tracking CPD for IT staff. So really, is there a sufficient focus and an impetus for organizations to maintain these things and to make sure that they are recorded and properly administered, not just making them available? Mary, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, I think this comes back to the whole notion of professionalism. if you were a medical professional, you wouldn't be able to retain your registration if you didn't do your CPD every year. And that hasn't been the case for people who are IT professionals. We in the ICS are trying to introduce a kind of a custom of people doing various different training courses, etc., and recording that CPD and having a record of it. But it's not compulsory. So it's very much up to the individual to do it, and it's up to employers to encourage them to do it. So if we were able to develop an acceptance that was even a voluntary code, I think we'd be going a long way. And then the external businesses, recruiters, and employment agencies would be looking for CPD records, and I think that would be a very good way forward.
Okay, Mark, do you want to address that one? Because again, working with the range of stakeholders that you do, the idea of continuous development and lifelong learning is probably a common theme among many of those conversations you have.
Yeah. And I think a bit of a legacy mindset here, where companies have typically burnt in order to do, and that's been the extent of it. And then there's been a kind of a mindset that you then train from within and develop from within. I can tell you that I think there's a change, but it's akin to kind of turning a cruise ship around. It's a slow change, especially within the big companies, the big multinationals and the big sort of Fortune 500 organizations, where I think the message to staff is, look, we as an organization, we're not in control of developing your career. You need to develop your own career to stay competitive in the job for this company. But I think what companies are saying is the individual needs to sort of manage the company in terms of the need. I think you're seeing a lot more around internal digital badging and digital badging connected to CPD accreditation as well. So it is becoming a thing with companies but it's driven from the employees. So it's driven from the bottom up as opposed to the top down. But you're seeing that change, and I think it plays in well to the company's aspirations to retain their talent as well. So I think it's becoming more prevalent as companies really start to try to figure out how to keep hold of their best people.
Okay. I'm just going to ask our producer Donna to line up our first poll, and as we go on. But Mary, something that you had mentioned that I wanted to come back to. You used the term novel schemes. So in terms of new ways of delivering learning and allowing engagement for professional development and skills. So maybe give us a little bit of detail there on how those things are going, because one of the constant tropes that we hear is that if somebody from the 19th century walked into modern life, one of the few things they might recognize is the classroom, and that very little has changed there despite the march of technology. So maybe give us a little bit of detail about what those novel schemes might entail.
Absolutely. Well, when you're talking about professional level education and training, you do tend to think of universities and colleges and institutes of technology and technological universities, etc. But the model is changing already. We already have, for IT now, we have a series of very successful apprenticeships. That's a method of upskilling young people that wasn't accepted in this domain until really quite recently. So that's one example. The kind of work that Mark and Skillnet Ireland are doing is definitely another example, where you're having focused training that is appropriate to particular industries and particular types of skills. That's also very, very relevant. From the CPD point of view and the work that we do in ICS, a lot of our engagement with the colleges, for example, now entails looking at individual modules of a program, so that if somebody wants to do upskill themselves in artificial intelligence, as just picking an example, they don't have to go and do a full master's, but they can pick an aspect of it and they can do a module and they can get accreditation for that, and they can get CPD for that. And that's a way of giving them some of the upskilling that they need in a very progressive way. There's lots of examples across Europe, more across Europe, I have to say, than in Ireland, specifically within the third level of the higher education sector, where there are accredited and potentially degree earning which don't have any lecturers, for example, where students are self-guided in their learning. They're given problems to solve, projects to do, and the result of the projects and how successful they are in finding solutions, that's what determines their accreditation and their qualification at the end of the day. So there's lots of good practice and good thinking out there.
Very interesting. Okay. Well, I'm just going to share the results on that poll then. So we asked if people's organizations currently have a continuous professional development policy. So it's good to see that almost 2/3 say that they have, which would hopefully tally with your respective experiences, Mary and Mark. So that's encouraging, certainly. But we have another question in, which I suppose is an old chestnut as well, in terms of training and upskilling is always seen as a cost in my company. How can I convince my superiors that there's another way of looking at it? And how do you suggest I frame the conversation? So again, it's I suppose trying to express that value proposition in it. But say, Mark, as you go and encourage people or encourage organizations to make those investments, what do you put forward as the value proposition?
Yeah, and it's great, and when we're kind of talking to industry and talking to business, we're talking to them about the end goal. So what is the goal for the organization? What's the 1 to 5 year plan? What are the core business objectives? What are they trying to achieve in terms of staying competitiveness and growing? And then we work backwards, and the goal is to say, okay, well, we know where you're trying to get to. How can we contribute? How does your talent contribute to that? If you're going to invest in technology, you're going to invest in technology. It's a classic example that then the training comes at 12 to 18 months later. So you lose that time. That's the lag time lost in terms of productivity and opportunity. And I would say that that's the same for an employee. And if I were working for a big multinational, just knowing that the environment and the appetite for success companies have, I'd be having that type of conversation with my manager or whoever leads that organization and saying, what are we trying to do as a company? How can I contribute to that? And how can you develop me so you get the best out of me to contribute to the overall mission? And companies, it is a discretionary spend, and we do know that, and we know that instinctively and anecdotally during recessions, it's the first spend that goes along with travel. But it doesn't need to be. And I think companies are becoming a bit more wiser. And I go back to my previous point about retaining talent. This is a really competitive environment, especially within the ICT world, with these disruptive type of fintech companies and the multinationals coming here. It's really tricky for smaller companies to retain their talent, and they need to invest in their human capital. And that's how they should be doing it.
Okay. Mary, do you want to come in on that one briefly, and just conscious of time there?
No, I think I would really echo what Mark said. I think the retention of talent is the main argument that can be brought forward, and the disadvantage to the business if the staff weren't trained. There's an opportunity cost that's there as well. So the competitive advantage and the retention of talent, I think, are the two main factors.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, just we're just about up on time there, but I think some of the key points that we've seen here are the fact that the lockdown situation has really highlighted the fact that even among knowledge workers, that perhaps our ICT skills aren't quite as robust as they could be. But despite that, there are novel schemes, as Mary has highlighted, to improve delivery and to increase effectiveness, but also to go beyond what might be seen as the traditional teaching and delivery methods. And as Mark has pointed out, there are such broad efforts to bring together the stakeholders and align everybody in terms of goals and what they want to achieve, that really there's no bar there to overcoming the the issues that we have identified. So thank you very much, everybody. I think that has been a very informative discussion, and I think that the questions we've seen there, that people are thinking hard about these things and how to solve the issues. So thank you to Mary and to Mark for your contributions there.
Welcome.
Thank you to all the attendees for coming in and paying attention, for the questions you've asked. Just a reminder that the Lockdown Your Learning series is on the YouTube channel for ICT Skillnet, and you can see that from their homepage. So just a final reminder that next Thursday on the 29th of October, Carmel Summers will be addressing aligning organizations' business and human capital strategy for competitive advantage, but also that there is a long list of the future sessions going all the way down into December. So please do check that out. So for today, thank you again to everybody involved, and we'll hope to see you again at another Lockdown Your Learnings webinar series.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this webinar, please follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to be kept up to date with all our news, events and programs. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this one.